Hi, you're watching Comic Talk. I'm Josh.
And I'm Drew.
This is our TV tie-in episode, the second one we've done. This is going to be about Arrow. We're going to talk to you about a couple of comics we think you should take a look at if you're looking at jumping into the comic book world and read a little bit more about this character in the world he inhabits. So we've got two series here that we're going to talk about. One being Green Arrow Year One. This is by Andy Diggle and Jock on the art. And we also have something called The Outsiders War. This is Jeff Lemire and Sorrentino. That's Andrea Sorrentino. So we're just going to jump right into this and start talking about these and how they relate. So right off the bat, first of all, these both have quite a bit of origin story in them.
They do. The Island from the show, I'm sure if you've seen one episode of it, you're familiar with the Island. It shows up heavily in both of these.
Right. The interesting thing is Green Arrow Year One, that's this one. This came out in, I believe, 2007. So this was before the New 52 reboot when they restarted the entire DC universe. So this is the official canon from the previous DC universe prior to the show existing. And then the Outsiders War, if you want to hold that back up again, see, get some visual reference. That's great. It also covers your face, so we
don't have to pay attention to
get
that.
like two good things at once. This one is one of the first looks back at the origin story on the island on the New 52. Mm-hmm. This is after the reboot, and this is after the show already exists. In fact, on some of these, we have advertisements for the show.
Yeah, February 2014 is when this story arc came out.
Right, so about a year and a half ago at this point.
Sure.
So we have two similar concepts here, but they're approached quite a bit differently. But we can see a lot of the show in each of these.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the differences between the Island experience first, because that's obviously a huge dividing point. Even though there's a lot of similarities, there are a lot of very stark differences.
Right. Okay, so in Green Arrow Year One, the previous version of this, we had him shipwrecked basically, but it was more of a thrown off of a boat. But he was on a yacht. He gets tossed off the thing and ends up on an island.
One of his employees tries to con him out of some money, and he wasn't supposed to be on the boat, but then he was on the boat, and he got thrown off of the boat and washed up on an island.
Right. And so the island he ends up on is a lot like the island from the show in a lot of ways, except it has a huge opium farm on it. And with slave labor and such. And
so that's the source of all the militia and such on the island, which he doesn't even discover until later in the story. I think he's there for a good couple of years, isn't he?
Yeah, he's
just
there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing on this one, a lot of alluding to Robin Hood. He talks about Robin Hood. He has the bow of one of the people that played Robin Hood from a movie or something that he actually has with him. And it's very much about a Robin Hood-esque experience of him sticking up for the little guy and doing the right thing.
And we also get commonality to the show in that in the beginning of this, he's just like a rich, spoiled brat, who made an ass of himself at a charity event. That was the event directly preceding the whole island experience. So
right.
Quite a lot of similarity there.
And stylistically, the look of this is a lot like the flashbacks of the Island episodes, and also the bits after the Island when he's in Hong Kong. On the show, he has that look in this with the long hair, the jeans, and the wife beater shirts and such. So we get a lot of visual cues from this, a lot of storytelling cues from this. Although the stories are different. The Mirakuru is not in this.
Right. Deathstroke isn't in this at all.
No Deathstroke.
The main villain is China White, which I think is amazing.
Right, yeah, that was good. So the other one, the New 52 version, You want to kind of explain that one for us?
Yeah, in this one, he is on the boat with his dad and follows the show a little bit more direct in that. And then, he gets shipwrecked on the island. And in that, he had been doing archery earlier in life, but he always just kind of shrugged it off, even though his teacher said he had a talent for it. But then when he was on the island, he, of course, had to do it to survive.
Right. Now, the interesting thing about this is, if I remember correctly, they're on an oil refinery that explodes rather than a yacht. So on this one, with the island, we get into a lot more of stuff with his father, which I think might be the first piece of situation where we might spoil not only this, we better say that we might give some minor spoilers in this review from this point forward.
Sure.
But we get his father in this comic. And I think this might be one of the first things that we spoil for seasons coming up in the show. We may see a return of the father.
I'm sure. I think even the direction they took with this was excellent. That it was this big overarching plan that he had all along to, forge Oliver into this person that he wanted him to be. To tie back to the show, almost a Malcolm Merlin-esque plot that he had the entire time.
Right. And in the show, we saw a lot of stuff like that with his mother, and we get hints of his father being a lot more invested in all of this stuff than is led on. So we could very well see a situation where his father somehow comes back, even though his father, I guess, on the raft shot himself, right? But we've seen people come back multiple times on the show already. So I could possibly see the father coming back. I'm not convinced that the father won't come back, even though he shot himself in the head on the raft. He might Lazarus pit himself back around somehow.
Right.
So further on into this, we get a really interesting, convoluted situation with these different clans. There's a clan for each weapon.
I think convoluted is fair. I don't think they necessarily took the time that would be necessary to develop, these supposedly century-old ideology people, that have been fighting for their weapon-based clans for, however long.
The outsider clans.
Right. We don't really get to see too much about them, other than the shield ones have shields and the spear ones have spears.
Right.
And
we're just told that they exist, deal with it, they're a thing. Which is the second thing that I think we may start seeing in the show. I would not be surprised if we saw some Sword Clan, Arrow Clan, Shield Clan, all of these things slowly coming in. And we even
not
have...
to mention, in that... What is that show that's going to be on in between the Heroes of Tomorrow or something? And even in Arrow, Legend of Tomorrow, Katana has showed up.
Right.
And Katana in this shows up, obviously, because Sword Clan.
Right.
No duh. So that would be a very obvious thing for them to do, is to take this whole idea of the Sword Clan and this character that they've been building and do something with it. Yeah.
Right, which brings me to something else I was going to discuss here, that we've seen discussion here about this show in the comic, with the comic supposedly moving more towards the show. So what are your thoughts on that? Can we talk about that for a minute? Let's just pull away here from our review of these and chat about that a little.
So we already have... It's called Arrow, didn't we decide that? The comic that literally has Stephen Amell's face on it every month.
Right.
So I don't really see why it's necessary to have your standard Green Arrow title follow the show when you have another comic that's directly following a show, and then you have the show.
Right. It seems a little pointless. But for fans of the show who are not comfortable reading comics yet, I can see the draw, I suppose.
But that's what the comic the show is, or the show the comic.
But I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody reading that.
I mean, I haven't read it, so I can't...
It could be good, who knows?
It could be.
As far as I know, it's the standard show tie-in garbage where they put a third-rate writer and a third-rate artist.
Oh, I'm sure it is, which is why I haven't read it.
Right.
I haven't heard anybody, touting its awesomeness.
Right, neither have I. Which is an important point to make to our audience here. If you'll notice, we are recommending Green Arrow and Green Arrow Year One, but we are not recommending the Arrow, the comic, for the show. And just generally speaking, I would never recommend jumping into the show version of a comic as your first attempt at getting into the comic universe. It's sort of a carbon copy of a carbon copy at that point. It's not the way to get into a medium. When a TV show is based on a comic, and then you base a comic on the TV show that's based on a comic, you just can't expect great things to come from that, in my opinion. If you want to read something that's more like the show as the show stands with that feel, I would say this is the one for you. If you want to move from the show to things that are more extravagant and comic book-like, and also more writer-driven, I think, as well.
Oh, absolutely.
This one is shooting more for a low dialogue.
It's a good story.
It's good, but it's about setting and tone and things like that, more like a show would be. Whereas The Outsiders
I guess maybe
here,
I was going for more like a good plot. Like they tell a good story.
yeah, it's a good yarn.
Right.
Right. Whereas Green Arrow Outsiders War is a lot more wacky comic book world. It's a lot more interested in telling a story within the comic book medium, really taking the comic book medium for what it's good for, which in a lot of times is narrative. There's a lot of great narrative in here, a lot of narrative boxes or like first-person omniscient type writing in here. We get to see in the head of Oliver a lot more. And we also just get to see him put into a lot of more wacky circumstances. We get also Magus, is something that could only happen in a comic book. We could never have that character in the TV show.
A ton of stuff. I mean, you would have to have an insane budget to even attempt to reproduce like even the most minute details in this. I mean, this is just such like an extravagant story,
Yeah, it's very extravagant, yeah. That is probably the best way to describe the difference here, the extravagance versus tonal focus here.
So on that note, we should talk about the artwork in both of them. I really like the artwork in both of them.
I do too. I think they both nail good classic DC comic book art, or classic in a modern term, as in kind of house style-esque, but really pumped up and done at a high quality level.
I wouldn't call it standard fare by any means. Like you can tell it's DC art, but it's done so well. I mean, this is like this 2-page spread right here. I mean, this looks like it's out of like Witches or something like that, or one of the ones that's like won multiple awards for artwork.
Right.
It's not. I mean, it's still a very comic book style, but it's just done so vibrantly and detailed and shadows, everything, line work, color work. It's all there.
Yeah, and this one also
Paneling.
Right, the paneling is awesome, but with Outsider War we have a lot more playfulness with the art, I think, in that we have what feels like multiple different styles of comic art interplayed within one another. We get some of what we see with guys like Marcos Martin or Travel Foreman, but then we also have this very, Sorrentino, which go figure is the guy doing the art, somewhere between digital and painted looks that are fairly detail-oriented work.
But it still feels a little bit watercolory sometimes.
Yeah, and a little bit sketchy. And we also, he uses different styles as he works through for certain panels to give us different feels. Like this page that you're looking at here is a great example where we have inlays of one or two color art. Like these small boxes here, which are very cartoony looking, very sketchy, to really drive the point home of certain things. And her, that's a pun based on the fact that he's shooting arrows there. Whereas this one, the Green Arrow Year One is Jock, which is funny because you did mention Witches for that one, and Witches is
A Jock book.
Jock's work. And this one has also the very I would say, very DC style. This is the most DC work I've seen Jock do, I think.
Seems a little restrained for him, I guess, in the light of Witches.
Right, and I think it's probably...
It's not bad.
Right, well, we got to remember this is 8 years ago.
True.
So he's had 8 years to improve his craft. And he also did the coloring himself here.
Oh, okay.
So, Jock
That is
did
true.
all of the art, whereas a lot of times other people are coloring Jock's art for him. And they usually put interesting colorists with him because he has such a distinctive style. It's fun to see,
What other people will do with it.
interesting people play with it. And I would say this is one of the more restrained works from his part, from his side. And you can still definitely tell that it's him, though. His coloring is fantastic. The way he structures things is very interesting. You get what I would say almost quintessential Jock style paneling, where we have like full page spreads with panels inside the full page spread.
Yeah, it looks erratic, but it totally makes sense what you're in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he uses a lot of paneling to do his storytelling. The way he structures his panels will tumble you through the page or slow you down as you read through them. But it's actually slightly harder to follow for a new reader, I think, than what's going on in the Outsiders Wars. So each of these have their pluses and minuses, I think, in both writing and art-wise. For somebody who's new, who may be watching the show and wanting to get into these. So both for the new reader in general for comics and the new reader just for Green Arrow, I think they both have merits that make them worth reading. All right, well, I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion here of these two series. Again, that was Green Arrow Year 1 and Green Arrow The Outsiders War.
This is New 52 Volume 5, I believe, if you're looking for it in trade form.
Right, if you want to get it in trade.
Lemire did Volume 4, 5, and 6, and I think all of them are pretty good. For some reason, the last one got pretty low reviews on Amazon, but I think it was just because it was maybe like a short run and he was just getting ready to pass it off. I thought it was good.
And both of these can be picked up off of Amazon or other online spots for $10 to $15 a piece. It's a pretty cheap investment to get into these and see what you think, and I don't think either of them will do you wrong. I think that'll wrap it up, though.
Yep.
We will be doing another TV tie-in episode. That'll be for The Flash, and you'll see that in about a week. We'll have that out. We'll be talking about Wade's run, Mark Waid.
As well as the New 52.
And we'll also be talking a little bit about the New 52 there. We may also do one for Supergirl as that comes around. I think that would be pretty interesting.
That'd be cool.
We'll try to keep doing these for those. Let us know if there's other comic book shows that you'd like us to dig into.
I wish there was more iZombie.
Yeah.
This is just kind of like the one thing. I'm not doing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I don't want to hear about that. Daredevil would be cool.
Yeah, we could talk about Daredevil. And I might even be able to convince you to do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Nah, I doubt it.
I might be able to find something you'd like there.
I doubt it.
Anything else you want to comment down there? We always love to read it. Like us, subscribe to us. We have our poll list review every Wednesday. Whether you liked it.
It's been pretty good recently.
Yeah, we've been having
had some pretty solid polls.
Great stuff. And we got the Marvel, all new, all different Marvel that will probably be mostly the same. But,
But brand new. Yeah.
They're rearranging those deck chairs, so we'll be looking at a bunch of that kind of stuff coming up. And we'll also be looking at all of last month coming up next week, so check that out as well. Other than that, get the hell out of here.
See you later. Buy this.